Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our /ProRevenge. In today's episode, if you make me solve the problem, it'll cost you money. Too busy to queue? Okay, enjoy your 40-minute wait. Demand that your money be moved? Don't let me tell you that this is a bad idea? Sure. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. If you make me solve the problem, it'll cost you money. This happened a while back, actually before Reddit was even thought of and no one had their own portable phone. A local business, auto repair shop, changed their phone number for some reason, and a few months later when my family added a second phone line to the house, guess which number we were given? It wasn't that much of a pain since most of the customer base had the new number, but about 6 months later we start getting calls for this business several times a day, so I finally ask one of the callers where he got the number from. He tells me it's on top of the business's building in 3-foot-high letters. Really? So I drive by that way the next day and sure enough, there it is in big blue letters. I look up the current number when I get home and give them a call. Hey, I've noticed that you still have your old number on top of your building and we've been getting a lot of your calls. Would it be possible for someone to correct the sign or just paint over it? This is where I get told it's my problem, and they don't have the time to deal with it. Click. Oh. Okay, now I see. So I figure it won't take long to sort this out. I start taking appointments. I tell a lady we're having a special on tires, I can get her a complete set for $75, $200 was average. I get a guy that needs a complete rebuild on his transmission, and how soon can we do it? I tell him that since we aren't very busy right now, if he can get it in the shop by noon, I have a guy that can have it done by 6 p.m. the same day, and it'll only cost him $750, super cheap by the way. I do this maybe 20 to 30 times over the course of a week or so. The calls become less frequent, and as I drive by the following week, I notice that the sign is now just plain white. I'm pretty sure that all in all I probably cost this guy about $10,000 or so in pissed off customers who showed up thinking they had an appointment and a great deal. I had this happen to me too, except it was a woman who kept giving out old business cards. I kept getting her calls for several years, and most of the time I just told the callers to let her know to stop giving out those cards. But one time, it was a guy trying to set up an interview with her. I let him know how she had been too lazy to update her business card and recommended he hire me instead. I almost got the interview, but sadly I wasn't qualified. I'd like to think that I cost her a job though. You should have done the interview just as a spiteful final blow. This was very well played, cherry on top for going out of the way to create realistic deals too. Yeah, the quotes OP gave were good deals, but not so cheap that it would be hard to believe. When my parents added a second line, back in the early to mid-90s, I started getting all sorts of calls for this one particular person. Saying he didn't live there didn't stop them. So eventually I just acted shocked when they asked for him, saying, "Didn't you hear? He died," and acted all upset. They stopped after that. My wife got a new number. Lucky her, the number was of someone in some serious debt. The collectors were aggressive. She got tired of it after telling them many times they got the wrong number. We started asking them to hold and playing "Never Gonna Give You Up" on repeat. One guy lasted like 45 minutes once. I suppose at least he was being paid. My friend kept on getting emails from a doctor's office for Linda about her upcoming appointments. After telling them multiple times that it was the wrong email address, he started to cancel those appointments. That fixed it really quick. This is an elegant solution. Well played. No need for lawyers, court, threats, or anything of the like, just a tactful redirection of people who were already wasting your time. Too busy to queue? Okay, enjoy your 40-minute wait. I worked security for a popular phone company in Dublin city centre. It's the flagship store and it gets very busy. We have this one guy, I'll call Mark, mostly because it's his name. He is rude, entitled, and ignorant. He comes in one day when there is a queue of maybe 6 people and walks right past it. I call him, he stops and I tell him to join the queue. He tells me he's too busy and needs to speak with someone. I'm about to approach him when the manager looks at me and gives me a reassuring nod. He's got this. So Mark walks straight to the manager, who is clearly doing some managerial stuff, and the manager tells him to wait, he's clearly busy. It's Ramadan, so the manager is fasting and in not a great mood. I'm waiting nearby because I can feel this is going to kick off because the manager is so hangry, and you can smell the food from the upstairs break room wafting down like the harbinger of tastiness and or hypoglycemic rage. I know the manager will probably kick off as bad as Mark will. I wait about 10 minutes, my eyes darting between the rest of the shop and the 2 would-be culprits, when I see the manager put his pen down and close the logbook thingy he was working on. Still looking down, he takes a deep breath and looks up with a smile. Mark steps forward and the manager puts his hand up. Not you, I'll serve the ones in the queue first, he says in his sternest but professional voice. Fine, is all Mark can say, giving me a serious amount of side eye. At this point, the queue had grown to over 15 people. I had to move away from that side of the shop to keep an eye on everything else. Mark looks at me and I tell him, again, to join the queue. No, I'm okay, is all he manages to get out. Fine then, wait outside the queue. Every time the manager finishes with a customer, Mark takes a step forward only to be rebuffed by a hand wave. The manager alternates between this and directly addressing the next customer to come to him. Mark won't go to the other member of staff because she has made an absolute show of him in public. Mark as a creep and up until then was barely tolerated by staff. He knows better than to try her. So Mark waits. And waits. People come and go, Mark sighs loudly every time the queue grows. He mutters something every time the manager tells him to wait. 40 minutes go by and the queue is down to 1 person. The manager goes for a glass of water and it's just me, Mark, the other staff member, and the customer. There's also a guy on the floor but only 2 points of sale, so he's kinda irrelevant, sorry bro. He is fuming. His fat face is pure red and he is clenching his fists. I slowly walk near him and stand nearby. He knows to keep his mouth shut around me, so I watch him quietly burn in impotent rage like an incense cone. The customer leaves and he stomps to the staff member, who gives him a look and says what? This woman has negative time for him and less patience. She a lovely woman and a great member of staff, otherwise, this is just how shitty Mark is. Mark starts to blather on about an issue. The staff sits there for 5 minutes and lets him rant. It's vaguely offensive, but he knows better to insult the staff directly. When he finally finishes, she just tells him that's a contract issue and to ring the call center. Technically she could have helped but didn't have to. Mark gets mad. He demands the manager. A staff member that was working the floor goes up. Take his sweet time. Comes back down with a cup of tea for himself and the other staff member. Sits down and tells Mark the manager is on lunch. Cue a bunch of insults and slurs and I ask him to leave. He squares up to me. He doesn't even reach my chest. I struggle to keep a straight face as the staff start giggling and he slinks out. You can smell the food from the upstairs break room wafting down like the harbinger of tastiness and or hypoglycemic rage. Poetry. Pure poetry. Question: had Mark gotten in the queue as initially requested, how long would it have taken for his question to get addressed? Thank you for your compliment. Roughly 10 to 15 minutes, the staff are good at what they do. Weaponized bureaucracy. Well done. You are technically correct. The best kind of correct. Awesome. I love stories of people trying to cut in line and having to wait instead. Demand that your money be moved? Don't let me tell you that this is a bad idea? Sure. Some of you might recall that financial crisis that happened a bit back, circa 2008-ish. At the time, I was working in a call center for retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. For any non-Americans, these are plans from your employer where you can contribute a portion of your salary, and usually they will also contribute something as well, to save for retirement. This is probably the biggest way that Americans save for the end. As the account holder, you have control over how the money is invested. Usually from a small selection of different mutual funds. Also, about the call center. I had some experience, I knew what I was talking about and was able to speak with confidence in my voice. Therefore, I was on the escalated line. This is reserved for the people who want to talk to a manager. I was not a manager, but I and others like me got these calls. In some rare cases, we actually fixed a problem, but more often than not, just told the customer the same thing they had just heard from the first rep, only with that level of confidence. Then they hung up as a happy customer. We also had the ability to review previous calls to the center. So, one day in April of 2009, an irate client was transferred to me. He had just gotten his quarterly financial statement, showing that he was invested in several different funds that were affected by the stock market. His complaint was that he had called a month earlier to request that his stock market-based investments be moved to something more stable and less risky. At that time, the news was all doom and gloom, leading people to make majorly ill-informed financial decisions. This didn't happen. As I reviewed the transaction history on his account, I confirmed that whoever he had spoken to previously had only redirected new contributions into stable funds, but had made no change to any existing balance. I told the gentleman that I could review the call, and if our rep had made a mistake, adhere to his wishes. I then tried to say something else, but was quickly cut off. Yes, review that call. I want my money out of the market. I try to say something like, okay, but sir. Only to be cut off again. This was not a man with a small account balance, at the time it was 500k plus, meaning that at the beginning of the crisis, he probably had around 1 mil in his account. I reviewed the call. And yes, our rep had made a mistake. I went through the process to retroactively conduct his requested transactions. The rep got a negative mark on his record for making a mistake, but the customer really got the short end. For those that don't know, the low point in the market was in early March of that year. Many stocks and markets rebounded enormously and very quickly. What I wanted to tell the guy was something like Fund A is up 28% since the day you made that call. Fund B is up 32%. And so on. But, as he didn't give me the chance to tell him to think about his request. Well, that is why I am posting here. As my company had to backdate his transactions, he instantly lost about 150k in his account and missed out on the boom. Of course, he called later to complain. But, even after our mistake, we had done exactly as he had asked. I hope he is enjoying his retirement. Sir, if you don't listen to me, I will do what you're asking. Great line, saving this. This reminds me about an anecdote I read a long time ago about the stock market plunge back in 1987. A fellow of modest income had been socking away money in a retirement account with a brokerage his whole working life, but hadn't really paid much attention to it. Day after the drop, he anxiously called his broker to see how long he would have to postpone his imminent retirement. Upon being told what his account balance was, he hung up the phone and started jumping up and down and laughing and celebrating. Even with the previous day's plunge, he was still much wealthier than he had realized. It's also true that despite that severe plunge, the stock market in 1987 actually gained a little bit over the course of the calendar year. It took a couple years to get back to the high that it had experienced in that year, but anybody who rode it out was fine, provided they were properly diversified. Of course, human nature is to buy when things are high and panic and sell when things are low. I've seen this happen so many times it makes my head spin. Friends in the financial sector invested a week before a major market drop. Rather than sit it out, they cashed out, losing 30% plus. Had they stayed in another month, they would have been all square and back to making a good return on their investments. Fidelity had a study that found the people whose 401ks did the best were the people who forgot they had it and died. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.